Hi, and welcome back to Stock Talk. This is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. So over the last couple weeks, I don't know if you realize it, but what I've been doing is I've started with the moving averages to help you define price structure in multiple time frames. And then last week, I went through ADX to help define which stocks and what you're looking to do, whether you're looking to buy a pullback in a specific time frame, as well as whether you're looking to buy a breakout in a specific time frame, and then kind of how to use it in multiple time frames. What I want to do today is to actually answer the question of when, using MACD to help with the timing using multiple time frames. And I think if we go into this agenda, so we want to help define when to do it. It's not going to be exact, but it's going to really help if you're looking at the price action. I think MACD can offer some key criteria, and we want to use it in conjunction with the price structure, the moving averages, and the ADX. And normally I'll see that stuff first. I'll see ADX setup I like, or the price structure turning, and then I'll use the MACD to help with that. And we want to go through, I'm going to explain the 4 different patterns that I use that are out of my book and my course that essentially I think if you understand them and you can use them on multiple time frames, they're going to help you pinpoint when you should be taking a really hard look at a stock. So let's go ahead and get into this lesson now. Okay, so I've got 4 time frames up, the QQQ, monthly in the bottom left, weekly in the bottom right, daily in the upper right, and hourly in the upper left. Now, if we're looking at the monthly to start, which is what I typically like to do, again, we want to confirm what we're seeing in the moving averages, the price structure, and also the ADX with MACD, right, to help improve the timing. So if we look at this on a monthly chart, I mean, we're making higher highs and higher lows. We have a very deep pullback here, but we don't really have a reversal in the price structure necessarily, and that is proven by the fact that the 40-month moving average is still rising. If you watch my video from a few weeks ago on the MA lines, this is in a transitional phase. It's not officially a reversal or anything like that. It would be considered a transition. Now, there's a couple of things that what I would point out is, number one, on the move to the upside into 2022, we had strong ADX. Now, we did start to see divergence in the DI lines off the peak, but the other thing we had to notice, and what I have brought up over the last several months, is the fact that this was extremely overbought when it was at the end of 2022. At the beginning of 2022, it overbought above the zero line, the MACD was. And over the course of time, during the course of the last year or so, we have worked off that overbought condition and we started coming back down to the zero line. So this is sort of confirming evidence because we don't see red DI breaking out or doing anything meaningful above the 25 line. So we've got kind of confirming evidence with MACD. The only thing is that this is not a timing signal. All right, that is a zero line reversal is telling us we have potential reversal, not exactly a reversal. We have to either wait for a trigger by this closing back above the zero line, which above the signal line, which I believe is late because it still hasn't really finished the month, and that's a big move that we've made off the low. Or we can go to the smaller time frames to try and identify an earlier signal when we know that we're reaching support on this time frame. Now, there is another signal here that's not quite as clean as I typically like. The low here versus the low here. They're kind of far apart in this case, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to use this as an example. So if you look at the low in MACD here and the low in MACD here, you see how this is making a lower low while price is making a significantly higher low? That is reverse divergence. Okay, so we know when that happens, especially when they're a little bit closer together, that you've got a trend in place on the daily chart because we're making higher bottoms, right? But MACD has worked off the overbought condition without price showing any deterioration. That's usually a bullish sign. So we want to be on the lookout for that when we're making a lower low in MACD and a higher low in price action. So we've got 2 things going on here. There's the reverse divergence and a zero line reversal setting up, while we know that the sellers are just not all that strong. So going into the end of 2022, look at the way this plays out. We're making lower highs and lower lows, and we come into this bottom and we make standard divergence. That's where price makes a lower low and MACD makes a higher low, right? We're making a reverse of that. Now, ADX is doing the same thing. It's sort of confirming what we're seeing. But if you want to play this is an aggressive entry. You probably want to get this big green bar coming back up to the upside, which is convincing evidence that it's really getting back up through that low. I personally would not raise the stop above this low if you're going to play this aggressive trade until you get more evidence that, we're really turning the trend on this time frame. So, but let's just review this. So we've got a potential reversal here. We've got standard divergence taking place down at this low. And then we break the downtrend line and pull back. This is where I think it starts to get very interesting because MACD crosses above the zero line and pinches in towards the moving averages, and we making lower highs, and it's a classic pinch play setup as this is crossing back above the zero line. And while that's taking place, that pullback here is where I've drawn the trend line on this time frame. And look at what we have. We have a lower highs and lower lows, but what MACD is doing is forming a zero line reversal, similar to this, only better because it's been tested twice. And we have low ADX, which is confirming evidence. So on the way up, we had strong ADX, and on the way down, we had a weak ADX. Now, as I've said in prior videos, so I wouldn't even be looking at this if this didn't show good strength on the upside and weak strength on the downside, but I'm going to use this to help with the timing. So I know that this is sitting right at the zero line, and in this case, it's a trigger one for my course. As soon as this breaks the trend line, we want to be buying. Now, while this is taking place and we're getting right near the breakout level, you could go down to the smaller time frame and see how this plays out. We break the downtrend line on this in the middle of March, and on the pullback to the moving averages, the MACD actually pinches in. So I think this is a pretty attractive setup when you think about it. Now, if you wanted a little bit more confirmation, right, you'd do that and maybe wait for this to cross over. But I'm just trying to show how these patterns just show up and repeat over and over again in all these different time frames. And if you can use them in multiple time frames, I think it can really improve your timing. And know that we are, like when this is developing here and you're so close to breaking the downtrend line, you're getting really close to getting a setup. You should be anticipating a buy taking place. All right. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into the individual symbols that came through now. If you're enjoying the content, please hit that like button and also subscribe so you can get notifications on any new videos coming. So just briefly, my services can be found at rabilstockresearch.com. The individual package has about 2 to 3 reports each week, plus a video, special video for that package. And you also have access to the trading course as well. So let's go ahead and get into the individual symbols. Okay, so as we get into the symbols now, I'm going to start with the QQQ. I am going to look at a few of the sectors just to show something, and then we'll get into the individual stocks. So we start with the QQQ again. I want to kind of keep track of this just based on what's taking place. And the point I really wanted to get across here is on a monthly chart, we crossed a declining 18-month line. All right. Now and so the way I treat this on the lower time frames is a trading move, because what we should see is some kind of a move up and then some form of a retest as this 18 starts to cup around, as opposed to just going straight and continuing to trade to the upside and starting a new trend right off the bat. Most of the time when I see this, we get some form of a retest while the 18 is cupping. And we're coming into, the high where there's a little bit more resistance as we get up in this index above 350. So if we keep that in mind, that doesn't mean it's an automatic sell the moment we get up into this resistance zone. What I like to do is there's two different things taking place here. Number one, on a weekly chart, we have MACD confirming the new high. And if you notice, the ADX is still rising and green DI is hitting another new high, right? This is pretty strong price action. This is way better than what you see in the S&P right now. The S&P is making lower highs in its DI. So this making a higher high, and the fact that this is rising, and the fact that the volume action is pretty good means that I'm okay with this right now on this time frame. Then what I want to do to get a little bit more sensitive to any kind of a reversal, I want to do the same thing on a daily chart. So is this making new highs here? I want to look and see, are we confirming new highs in the MACD and in the green DI especially. I do want to see the ADX making new highs, but it's going to lag a little bit. So I want to watch green DI and I want to watch the MACD. And if we make a new high like we're doing here, then I'm sort of assuming that a pullback is going to lead to another move up. All right. Now, if this doesn't retrace back close enough to the 18 and it really makes another move like this, then we know the 18 is going to start stretching away and moving up more rapidly than the 40. Then we have to look for some kind of a climax pattern. That will not necessarily show divergence in these indicators. So if we do that, we push up right now and we get a big spike in price action, that would be a climax as opposed to a momentum divergence. So right now I'm on the lookout for a pullback. If the pullback comes in a little closer to the 18, makes another new high, and then MACD does not confirm, and DI does not confirm, or really either one, then I'm going to probably start tightening stops and looking for an exit point. And that should take place at this somewhere in the area of this next peak. Let's just see what that level is. We're getting into it now. It's about let's call it 360 to 365. So that's really what I'd be watching for, either a climax pattern, and this is the way I would look at selling if I'm looking to exit on strength or trying to catch the top in a move. I'm going to be watching MACD and especially this green DI. If green DI does not confirm a new high after making a pullback, then I'm going to start to tighten up stops and get a little bit more nervous about the top being formed. The other thing you could do is look at the ADX on the hourly. So if you notice, these strong moves to the upside are being confirmed by really strong readings. The first time you do that, make a new high or test a high, and this is really dropped off. The blue line is right around the 25 level when we hit a new high. That's when we have a sign of real exhaustion in the trend. All right, so those are the things I think I'd be watching for on this. Now, I just want to take a quick peek at a few of these sectors, and I really want you to just focus in on this weekly chart and look at we just point out what the QQQ is doing, right? Hitting new highs, breaking out. The S&P is up at its highs, just barely at a new high. Really, it's just failing kind of right near the highs, but it's up here, all right? Look at what this is doing. Look at what the XLE is doing. You see how this is down testing the lows? Look at XLF. Down testing. It's not actually shown as much weakness, but it had a lot of weakness on this move. It's much, much weaker than the indexes. Look at XLI. Right? Going down and testing these lows. I mean, this is actually, so I kind of look at this chart and say, you know what, it wouldn't take very much if this can hold and turn back up. This could look pretty good in a hurry. But if it comes down and takes out this low, I would say that's pretty concerning, especially based on the fact that the S&P is up near its highs. So I think, as I mentioned last week, I like to look at the sector charts, but look at how weak these continue to be. Even this week, where the market again is trying to break out. I know it's failing a little bit, but it's up near its highs. You got to sort of look at these and just look at it in the context. Look at what the relative strength line is doing. As long as this line is declining, this area is just not a leadership area right now. And we can go and look and see look at the relative strength and what that's doing relative to the S&P on the materials sector. So just thought I'd point that out. Until we start to see improvement in some of these areas, XLB, meaning materials, energy, financial, industrial, we need some expansion in those areas before we can start to feel really good about, I think, the market in general. All right, let's start going through a few of these symbols. Now, I do want to touch on this because I got a question from someone who who's taking my course, and he's asking as to whether we have an undercut and rally pattern forming on this CROX on the daily chart. Now, undercut is where we break a key level and immediately reverse back up. So But there's a couple things that are missing here. Number one, this green bar needed more follow through. And then what we want to do is look for a test of this area. So we want it to move up and then come back and test. So this is not a trigger bar for an undercut. We only have the undercut pattern. We haven't really formed a higher low, which is, I think, very critical to this setup. So that's number one. Number two is I actually want to see the larger time frame showing an uptrend underneath this, right? I want the 18 on the higher time frame to be rising. And if you look, the 18 is actually rolling over here. I know we're finding support at the 40, but we've got a 18 that's rolling over. We kind of violent pullback. This isn't really what I would call like a shakeout pattern, which is what I'm looking for in these undercut patterns. I'm looking kind of like a shakeout that reverses quickly and turns back to the upside. In most cases, that 18 is still going to be rising. Even if it's not providing support, it should still be rising underneath. And if you notice, even on the 18, so if you wanted to use the 18 on the highest time frame, this one is falling too. So neither one of these are supporting the setup that I'm looking for in an undercut and rally pattern. I really think this is caught. I think there's pretty good support underneath around 100, and I think there's pretty good resistance probably around 120. It just doesn't look like it's ready to do anything yet because of the fact that we got through this level and now we're coming back through it. You see that? I mean, I want it to get through it strong enough so that when it comes back, it holds it on a pullback. All right. Hopefully that answers your question. It's a little early, essentially, when I look at this on a bigger picture. Okay, let's look at KR. So we hit some key resistance up here at 50 and it just wasn't able to get through. I do believe that person who asked about this, I think you're looking at this the right way. This was a pretty good looking longer term pattern in the way that it was developing. It caught my eye a number of times, the fact that the ADX was low during the correction and strong on the up move. But we really needed to break out here. And I would still consider that a breakout pattern because look at how long it stayed a low ADX pattern. So once that happens, I'm no longer looking for any kind of an upturn or trying to get early or anything like that. It's got to get through 50. Once it gets through 50, then it's game on. As long as these lines are still rising, we're forming a reverse divergence. Remember, we talked about this in the lesson. You see how this low and this low, compare these bottoms. Look at the most recent bottoms. This is a reverse divergence. I like that. The problem we've got is the weakness in the near term. Look at the weakness really showing up just in the last week. So that tells me this move is on hold and that 50 is probably going to be a problem. We want to see a strong bar coming up through 50. If this all stays the same, we've got a really good look here, but we don't have a trigger. HPQ. So, yeah, I mean, we have a declining 18-month, and it's not like it. I know this is coming into the zero line. We have low ADX. Let me just take a look at the quarterly chart. It is coming into major support. I mean, I don't think there's much downside in this. The problem I've got is you see that quarterly bar? It's a big, nasty quarterly bar. I don't think we're going to be able to get through that quite yet, even though when I look at this on a monthly chart, we are coming into the zero line. But look at the pattern. You see the strong bars. Look at the size. So let's just, this is really important actually, because I know this is qualifying as a potential zero line reversal with low ADX, but look at what took place. You see the violence of the move to the downside, the size of these bars, and then look at the size of the bars coming back up, and look at the fact that the 18 is turning down. So I think it's much more likely based on that we're coming here, we're going to come back down and then turn back up. I don't think this is going to be a quick turn and just take out the 18 because we got a zero line. So I like what you're thinking, anticipating a little bit. This week's action sort of cinches what I'm thinking, just the failure at that 18. But I got to tell you, just because this is coming to the zero line, I don't like the price bars on the monthly. I don't like the way this is setting up. You can see the tails on the monthly over the last couple months. It's just not quite ready yet. Give this a little bit more time, and then maybe on the second time through, this could look more interesting. Okay, so ACN. So here's a zero line reversal here. And, if we wanted to cheat and compare these two lows, you got the reverse divergence as well. We got strong move to the upside, and then during this long correction, we don't have enough strength. Now, one thing I'll say is that there was enough weakness in the way this was developing that it looked almost too weak. And we started to see price continuing to make lower highs, even though this was making higher highs. So you could have argued that this was potentially setting up to go down, but then when there was no follow through to that, you came down and tested and you turned back up. This green bar was the changing bar for me, where I knew that I started to think that now I don't think this is going down anymore. I actually think this zero line reversal is going to start kicking in back to the upside. And what ended up happening is, you had two strong bars to the upside and then a pullback, formed a pinch play, and now turned back to the upside. Now we're getting a zero line cross. Look at what green DI is doing for the first time. Look at how, so here's red DI crossing above and staying above essentially this whole time until now. You can also see the volume pattern improving. So there's definitely some things here that I think are getting more attractive. I'd like to see a little bit more follow through here and then a higher low form, because I want to see this 18 cup around. This 18 is still falling, and I'd rather see this setup take place with the weekly and the monthly in conjunction. Right now, it would be a short-term trading move, and I just don't know how far that's going to carry, especially with the spike pattern developing on the daily bar here. Okay, CRM. So we're getting a pullback in this. I really felt like looking at it on the weekly, we turned the trend, but we haven't had that really clean pullback after the strong move to the upside. We do need this to pull back a little bit more. It's possible that 200, 195 area is now going to act as support on a pullback. I would just like to see that happen. I'd like to see the daily chart form an opposing trend where the 18 crosses down below the 40, the MACD comes down closer to zero. I think that's the next clean entry signal, and when that happens, the 18 months should be cupping around. We're up about 4 or 5 months now off the low. You can see it on the weekly really clearly. I just think we're due for some kind of a pullback, but that is a viable pullback. I mean, it's a pullback I'd be watching for as a potential entry. Somewhere between 190 and 200 is where I'd be thinking. Okay, Shopify. So same pattern repeating over and over again. Look at the monthly chart. Do you see how we're crossing a declining 18-month line? So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that we can't get through, we can't carry, we can't move and have a move. What it means to me is that it's a trading move. It's not the start of a major trend yet. But we can play this off the weekly like this was here and play this for a move up. I think with the gap and everything, I just have a feeling this 65 area is a pretty strong resistance area for now. I don't expect this to get through that. I bet we spend more time consolidating. But what you could do is watch this pullback closer to the 18 on the weekly. I'd like it to hold the midpoint of this big bar here. If we can hold the midpoint during this pullback and get a little bit closer to the 18, and maybe hold this breakout level, then I'd be looking for an entry on the daily chart. And hopefully it's just a time pullback and not a price pullback. Like if we consolidate sideways, I think this would set up really nicely. But if it keeps pulling back deeper and deeper, and I think the odds of this working right now are probably not as good. So keep an eye on this. I think if we can stay, above, I'd like to see it above 50, probably a little bit higher than that. But overall, I could probably continue to watch, but I just don't know that we've already had a pretty good trading move in a stock that's really not in an uptrend. Okay, so I kind of like the looks of this. Now, we've got a cross here, and it was declining. So this is what I've been talking about. This is what you'd expect, a pullback. Now we're getting the pullback, but look at how mild it is. Look at how we've got tails forming on the pullback. Notice how the MACD is holding on the pullback. So I know this is still declining, but by the time this turns up, this will turn up underneath, and it'll look actually pretty good. Now, we need it to turn up. We need a signal on this time frame. We don't have that yet. We need something to show that it's really, we haven't really had a good close above the 18 here. I don't know that I'd necessarily wait for a cross of the signal line. But because the ADX is strong, I'd be watching this pretty close. Maybe a breakout above 295. You know, you could wait for 300, a break above 300, a big round number. I would also be pretty bullish, but I would say just coming back up through 290 would be the first sign of interest for me. Just based on the way this is developing, it looks pretty good. Let's just cover Amazon really quickly, because another one that's coming up towards the 18-month line, and it doesn't mean we can't get through. I think the biggest thing that's going on with Amazon is look at what the relative strength line is doing. We're very, very close to breaking the downtrend line for the first time in a long time. Now, I'd be watching for a pullback in this and watching the relative strength, but kind of interesting. It's not timely, but I'd be watching a pullback on the weekly. Thanks for joining me today. My contact information is listed. If you have any stock requests, send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.